Nearly 7 years ago, when I first started this channel, before I ever made my first video, I put together an extensive list of video topics I would love to cover one day. Flashiest idle plays in Survivor, most brutal blindsides in Big Brother, the top 5 most statistically impressive states, what's up New Jersey, and then, at one point, I wrote this one down. The absurdly particular history of Big Brother players winning the veto and not using it on themselves. It's a mouthful. And I mean, we've had 5 moments at that point. It could be a top 5 and a bottom 5. It was so niche, so random, to not be kind of incredible that I felt compelled to jot it down and wonder if it would ever see the light of day. When would I ever bother with that one? Internet, welcome. That day is today. In a recent episode of Big Brother 26, host Julie Chen remarked how Tucker was the 6th person in the history of the show to be nominated, win the veto, and not use it on themselves. And while Tucker is currently the latest player in the history of the game to do this, and the last time we ever saw someone do this was 7 years ago, I think it's worth mentioning that there was technically a 6th example before season 26 with Tucker. Big Brother 3 in 2002. The first time we had ever seen the power of veto, a new twist introduced in the first week to shake up the game. Normally, if the head of household nominated you, then you were screwed. You were stuck on the block come eviction night at the end of the week. But the veto could change that. In Season 3, the power of veto could be won through a competition, and it could be used to take one of the nominees off the block, forcing the current HOH to put up a 3rd player on the block that week in their place. Whoa, this is getting complicated. This was a huge deal, and as we saw as early as week 1, it had a huge impact on the game.
I don't think it's really going to affect me. I hope I'm not wrong. I don't think I'm in any trouble. Jerry could get screwed.
I was like, oh, this is good.
Marcellus, I'm going to veto your nomination.
When Jerry gave me my life back, when Jerry saved my soul, it was amazing.
Well, actually, it kind of didn't. It didn't really have much of an impact. This was the only time on season 3 where the veto would be used. Every other week throughout the rest of the season, it wasn't. But a major reason for that was because the entire cast competed in the veto comp, and so a lot of players who weren't really relevant to the nominees' games could win it and then just decide to not use it. It was easier to respect the wishes of the HOH. Kinda sounds eerily similar to where we are today, huh? Even more importantly than the entire cast competing to win it each week was the small caveat to how it could be used. Because if I asked you to close your eyes and visualize the veto in your mind, you would probably not do that and think that I'm kind of weird for suggesting it, but even then, you would still probably think of its golden vibrance and sheen, how it radiates power. And then you would learn that that's not actually what the veto looked like back in 2002. It wasn't golden. It was actually silver in color, and it was called the silver power of veto. Yeah, so the silver variant was not the same as the golden one, and it meant that if a nominee won it, they could only ever use it on the other person on the block, not themselves. Or they could just not use it at all. The silver veto worked mostly the same as the golden one, except for that one caveat. Kinda strange in hindsight, and I'm guessing that it was made this way to force the nominees to rely on their social game a little more than just winning competitions, but either way, that was the silver rule. Do unto others as what you would have them do to you. Wait, isn't that At the final 6, Amy was nominated next to Roddy, and she went on to win that silver veto. Roddy campaigned for her to use it on him, and she wanted to. She almost did, but she ultimately chose not to when Roddy revealed he planned to still vote her out. Which, from a strategic sense, doesn't really make much sense, but Roddy believed if he was honest, it would earn him more favor. Instead, it earned him a spot on the jury, as Amy did not use the veto on him, and he was evicted. But still, even though this is not the same as the golden veto, I really wanted to just find an excuse to talk about this absurd situation from over 20 years ago, because technically, Amy won the veto and didn't use it on herself, making her the first person to ever do so, even though she was never allowed to anyway. I know it doesn't count, but still, I'm bringing it up. Sue me, Julie.
A long, long time ago, I said if Roddy were ever on the block and I had the power of veto, I would take him off the block. And as hard as this is for me, and as much as I know that you'll probably hate me for this, and it hurts me a great great deal to do this. I just can't. I just can't do it.
I am burying the lead by talking about Big Brother 3 and not talking about Marcellus. The first time ever in the history of Big Brother, a player won the golden power of veto and didn't use it on themselves when they were on the block. 1 week after Amy didn't use the veto at the final 5, Marcellus was blindsided by Jason when he nominated him, put him on the block. But then the golden veto was introduced to the game for the first time ever. If a nominee won it, they could use it on themselves to get off the block. Marcellus was nominated next to Amy. Marcellus was the target of the people in power, and then Marcellus won the veto. And Marcellus was fooled by the players in power, Jason and Danielle, into believing that he was not the target. He sincerely believed Amy was the target, that she didn't deserve to be in the final 4, and that's what everyone else was thinking too. And to be fair to him, Lisa did plan to evict Amy over Marcellus, and after Marcellus and Danielle had a long talk about their shared interest in reaching the end together, she swore to evict Amy. Marcellus liked Lisa a lot, and despite winning the veto, the golden power veto, the first time ever in the history of Big Brother, he didn't want to use it on himself and be selfish when all it meant was Amy was still getting evicted. Why force Jason to nominate Lisa? Why force Lisa to have to sweat it out on the block? Why fool Amy into believing she was anything but the target all week? Marcellus always held the weight of the world on his shoulders, a lot of this cast did, and he decided to take the selfless route by not taking himself off the block. Instead, he sat on the block next to Amy, and come eviction night, the die was cast. Lisa voted out Amy, but Danielle didn't. She pined over her decision, but she always treated this like a game first and foremost. Innocent as a dove, but sly as a snake. And so she evicted Marcellus, forcing a 1-1 tie, having Jason, her ride-or-die partner to the end, to cast the tie-breaking vote to his face.
Jerry used the veto once for me, and it was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. Within this game, I'm not going to use it. I don't want you to have to decide between them. I don't want you guys to go through the moment that I went through this week.
You're positive about your move. I will leave it at that.
As harsh and as terrible as it is, you should have used the veto. I'm sorry, but I vote to evict you, Marcellus.
First of all, Marcellus, I need to do this to you.
Oh, no!
What were you thinking?
That was the true first time a player who was on the block won the veto and didn't use it on themselves. And you would think a harsh lesson would be learned from that, and well, it kind of was. It wouldn't be until 5 seasons later in 2007 with Big Brother 8 that we would see another player on the block do the same thing, with Dick Donato winning the veto at the final 9 and choosing to use it on the person sitting next to him, Danielle Donato. Yeah, she was Dick's daughter. This was a twist of the season. They had a rocky relationship, and Dick often prioritized her game above his. And so when the house was against the two of them and their backs were against the wall, he came up clutch and won the veto, securing his safety, but not his daughter's. Dick chose to take the road less traveled in the game for reasons that I think many parents would often travel themselves. He chose to save his daughter's life in the game and sacrifice his own by using the veto on her, basically dooming his game. Except, well, he would later survive this week and go on to win this season, where he and Danielle would actually make the final 2. Kinda wild how low and high their journey was that year. And unlike Marcellus, Dick did not suffer the consequences Marcellus faced back in season 3. Mind you, there was another major twist that season called America's Player that did ultimately flip the vote and save Dick from eviction. America controlled Eric's vote and had him vote to save Dick. But still, had Dick not won that veto and even potentially used it on Danielle instead of himself, it wouldn't have mattered. That veto made a world of a difference for him.
Not to use the veto on myself, but use it on my daughter Danielle. If she likes it or not, she's coming off the block today.
I'm really nervous this week. Oh, I feel so fine being up against Dick.
And then, at the final 4 of the same season, Big Brother 8, Danielle won the last veto and chose to take Dick off of the block instead of herself. returning that favor from the final 9, granting him the ability to evict Jamaica instead of her doing it. It all came full circle.
I can't just sit here and not return the favor. I've thought about it a lot, and I just can't do that. And I do decide to use the veto, and I want to replace the favor, and I'm taking my dad off the block.
We also saw something similar happen 4 years later on Big Brother 13 when Brendan and Rachel were nominated in week 4, and then Brendan won the veto but chose to use it on Rachel and save her over himself. Brendan and Rachel were returning players from the previous year, season 12, and they got engaged before season 13. They were fiancés, and Brendan wanted to do the chivalrous thing by giving Rachel a second chance in the game. Also, Rachel was probably the better player of the two, and hey, you can't argue with the results given that Rachel would go on to win the game. Had Brendan not saved her here, she likely gets evicted, and we very well could have had a different winner.
I've decided to use the power veto on my fiance, Rachel.
I feel like a fairy tale princess right now, that my knight in shining armor came to save me from the wicked witch that lives in the HOH room.
If you're keeping track, we're now on to the 5th time a player hasn't used the veto on themselves, starting in season 3, then twice in season 8, then season 13, and now we jump 6 years ahead to 2017 and Big Brother 19. And this particular moment isn't all that remarkable in my opinion, largely because it was a twist-based variation of a player not using the veto on themselves, where it really wasn't as opportune to do so based on the mechanics of the twist. Essentially, there was a new competition for a few weeks in the season called the Temptation Comp, where the player who won it would be safe for the week, and the player who lost it would be a third nominee on the block. The caveat was that you didn't have to play in the comp if you didn't want to. It was a temptation. In the prior week, the two house targets, Cody and Jessica, gamed the system by both competing. Cody went on to win the comp and get safety, and Jess went on to purposefully lose it, nominating herself. This also meant that she can now compete in the veto and have a chance at safety. She didn't win the veto and she was evicted at the end of the week, but in the following week, we saw the same thing happen, only now the majority were gaming the system to team up against Cody. Matt, a member of the Majority Alliance and a serial eater, chose to do what Jessica did in the week prior. To guarantee Cody could be backdoored and not play in the veto, Matt threw the Temptation Comp and got himself nominated, meaning Cody likely wasn't playing in the veto. Cody didn't play in the veto, and instead Matt actually won the veto himself. The tricky part of this equation was that because Matt was nominated via the Temptation Comp and not from the HOH, this meant that if he took himself off the block with the veto, there would be no replacement nominee, meaning Cody, the house target, couldn't be nominated and backdoored. So Matt instead chose to use the veto on Jason, another nominee in the Majority Alliance, and took him off the block, having Cody replace him, sitting next to Matt and Elena. Cody was unanimously evicted. So yeah, Matt won the veto, used it on someone else, but it was due to the twist of the week and how it worked mechanically. Otherwise, I think Matt likely just uses it on himself, or Cody just gets backdoored like any other backdoor plan.
Historically, it's pretty rare for the veto holder not to use the veto on themselves when they're on the block. So last thing that I want to do is get overconfident and make a move that could cost me my life in this game.
Jason, I have decided to use the power veto on you.
Extreme! I'm sorry, Cody. I nominate you. I wash my hands of this.
I am clearly the target for everyone in this house, and the hopes of me somehow saving myself just... it's grim.
Now this does bring us up to current day, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention one more moment of this absurdly particular event happening, as I need to talk about what happened in 2021 during Big Brother Canada Season 9 at the Final 6, when Jed won the veto and, spoiler, shocker, he didn't use it on himself. Jed was nominated next to his showmance Beth, and then he won the veto, planning to take himself off the block. However, Jed was in a Final 3 alliance, the Sauce, with Beth and Ty, and he didn't want Ty to get replaced after he used the veto on himself and came off the block. A plan was hatched where Kiefer, another player who was somewhat allied with Jed, pitched to the HOH Tara for Jed to use the veto on Beth, take her off the block, and replace her with Brayden, an outsider in this group. From Jed's perspective, this would mean Brayden could get evicted and Jed would have both Beth and tie with him in the final 5. However, that wasn't the actual plan. Jed thought it was, but similar to Marcellus, in truth, Jed was the target, and Kiefer, Beth, and Ty were gonna blindside him. Jed was a big threat, a comp beast, and Ty and Beth thought they didn't really need him anymore for their endgame. Beth really wanted a big move on her resume. One of the coldest betrayals in the show's history, but from a gameplay perspective, it was tactically brilliant. Jed was convinced to save Beth, and then Ty and Beth turned around and voted Jed out. Kiefer also voted Jed out, but that was understandable given Jed tried to evict him in the previous week, what a fiasco, and then pulled a half measure and didn't. It was a hot mess. I recommend watching this season, it's a good one. Jed's decision to not veto himself is easily one of the worst moves in Big Brother history, and on the flip side, a pretty great one for Ty.
Win the veto, use it on someone else. Sit on my block and stay. That is legendary. I have decided to use the power of veto on Beth.
At the end of the day, you made the move for us. So now it's our job to return the favor.
I'm telling Jed what he wants to hear, but it's not looking realistic to keep him in this game anymore. Now it's the end game, and this is just the right thing for my game to do.
By a vote of 3-0. Judson, you have been evicted.
But that's Canada. We are mostly focused on the US version of the show, and so we get to season 26 in 2024. 7 years after season 19, we finally see one more moment where this phenomenon happens. And as someone who's been watching the feeds extensively and watched this happen live, let me just say, it was a sight to behold. As of this video, this moment just happened a week ago, but still, let's talk about it. Let's recap it. Tucker won the veto and hatched a plan to blindside Quinn, a guy holding a secret power that was way overpowered. And he roped in Cedric, the current HOH, to help him make the move. Tucker was on the block as a pawn, and he wanted to use the veto that he just won on Angela, another nominee. Because, well, Tucker is a beast in comps, and he didn't lack for confidence in himself. Likewise, Kenny was on the block too as a third nominee because there was and is a twist called the AI comp that took place right before the eviction, where the nominees would compete head to head, and the winner would be safe, leaving the other two facing the vote. Quinn was a physical threat, and Tucker wanted to battle him head to head, so this meant that Angela should come off the block so Tucker could prevent Quinn from securing safety. It's a huge gamble, but if it pays off... Except Cedric did not love this plan. Cedric has been in a majority alliance with half the house, and after he heard this plan by Tucker, he took a temperature check from the other members of the alliance and realized they likely didn't have the votes. That being Tucker and his entire new plan. They didn't have the votes to make this work. Cedric felt like he had a better path forward by not blowing up his spot this early in the season, unlike Tucker, who wasn't really in anything solid and only wanted to drop bombs. Right before the veto ceremony, Cedric told Tucker not to save Angela, but to instead use the veto on himself. The plan was off. But Tucker didn't care, he didn't want to hear this, and he wanted to force Cedric's hand, kind of almost strong-arming the HOH into making the move. If Tucker led the charge, Cedric would surely have to follow. So, at the veto ceremony, Tucker stood up, used the veto on Angela, despite what Cedric just said, and then Cedric put up Mackenzie in Angela's place, not Quinn. This was a massive betrayal from Tucker's perspective, despite being told not to do it. But that's not how Tucker plays, and you know, to be fair, a part of this game is managing all kinds of personalities, and Cedric underestimated at just how far Tucker would go to make a big move. The funny thing on top of all this is that Mackenzie also had a secret power too, and she used it to save herself. She came off the block right away, and now America got the chance to vote for a third nominee. America ultimately voted for Quinn to go up on the block, fulfilling Tucker's plan all along, and then Tucker beat Quinn in the AI comp, meaning Quinn was now left on the block come the vote. This was the entire outcome that Tucker and Cedric were planning, except, well, the house wasn't planning this. They weren't on board with any of this after Tucker lost his cool on Cedric, and when you combine that with Quinn promising safety to a majority of the cast for this upcoming week, given that he had the secret power, he could just protect half the house, everyone else just voted out Kenny. And amusingly, despite getting evicted, Kenny was the happiest player in the game. Or now, out of the game. He was ready to go, and I think this season's better for it.
Big brother, expect the unexpected. Here you go, Angela. Mackenzie, I'm sorry. We'll take your place on the block.
All good, baby. No hard feelings.
We gotta play. Yeah, we do.
I am using America's Veto to save myself from the block.
And that's it. That is the absurdly particular history of Big Brother players winning the veto and not using it on themselves. I am surprised I managed to get as much out of this topic as I did, but hey, I guess there's always something interesting to unearth, no matter how small the pebble. Heck, you know what? 5 years ago, I talked about the long history of players in Survivor getting voted out with 2 idols in their pocket, a very rare phenomenon. And then 3 weeks later, it happened again. Let's see how long it takes for the next instance of this veto shenanigans to pop up. Over under, are we talking 1 year, 4, 7? I say come back to this video in the future and let me know where we're at when it shows up. Either way, thank you to my patrons for all your support. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to play the veto on yourself on your way off the block. That is the plan, isn't it? And I will see you in the next one. Once I talk about the absurdly particular history of winning the HOH and trying to nominate yourself.